now trapped. Another indication of the quality of life is indicated here in the center. And in the canonical account, the Buddha instructs the disciples to paint the 3 poisons at the center of the wheel. The 3 poisons are the psychological afflictions that drive all of sentient life, namely greed, delusion, and hatred. And they're represented by a chicken, a boar or pig, and a snake in the center. So, we have suffering, we have the forms of life within samsara, inside the spokes, we have the hub or the driving force for suffering, we have the connection between lifetimes, we have all of us being grasped by impermanence, but we also have some hints in the painting that there is a way out of samsara. And some of those hints are inside the wheel, some are outside the wheel. If you look in each of the 5 or 6 paths here, you'll notice that there is a larger figure in each one of them. It's a Buddha figure. He appears, there are 6 different Buddhas that appear inside the wheel. They're larger, they're supposed to have different colored skin in each one. Here, for instance, is the Buddha figure who appears to the gods. And the reason that he appears in this form to the gods, you'll see, what is he doing? I'm not sure you can make out the detail. He's entertaining them. He is a musician, and he holds a lute in his hands. So he is singing to the gods, and the reason he assumes this guise is that that's the only form in which gods will listen to a sermon. Gods only like to hear pleasant things. So they like to listen to music. They'll listen to a Buddha if he appears as a musician. Among humans, he appears as the Buddha we knew, the so-called historical Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, here. Among the hungry ghosts, he appears here. He's got a little water jar in his right hand there. What's in that jar? A small amount of sweet dew or ambrosia. It's sustenance in liquid form, and that's because that's the only thing that the hungry ghosts can get down their throats, is a little drop of sweet sustenance. Those are figures inside the wheel that suggest some relief from suffering, but there are also some figures outside the wheel. In this painting, they are these 2 figures here on the right, and then this object up here. Let me give you a slightly better close-up of them. On the right, floating in the clouds, off somewhere, perhaps in nirvana, but certainly off somewhere away from the wheel of rebirth, is this figure. It's a monk. He has a halo. It's Shakyamuni Buddha. Notice how tall he is compared to his human disciple here. And this is one of his disciples, Malgayayana by name, or Mulian in Chinese. And the historical Buddha is pointing over here. He's directing his disciples' gaze over here. And now I want to look and talk about what this is over on the other side. This is connected to a story which I'll run down in a few minutes about the painting of the Wheel of Rebirth. But let me explain the painting to you first. I apologize for how blurry this is. This is a wheel on a throne or platform, a lotus platform. This is, in PowerPoint, we call this a text box. This thing right here. It's it's 2 stanzas of poetry. It's text in Tibetan, and it's a standard set of phrases. We have same translations of them. Originally they were in Sanskrit, they were translated in Tibetan. We had the same ones in Chinese. Very common, basic Buddhist teachings on the impermanence of life, the suffering that one undergoes in samsara, and the importance of renunciation, of giving up, and of renouncing. And the full form of that, of course, is to become a monk. And so most usually these stanzas talk about becoming a monk or a nun. Well, what's on top of them? What's on top of them is, guess what, another wheel. I've gotten used to counting how many spokes it has. Usually this is on display in the Rubin Museum, by the way, so it's relatively easy to see, and it's mounted right at eye level. So it's a great it's a good way to learn more about Buddhism, is to go and count the spokes on the wheels. This wheel has 8 spokes and 8 sectors in it. Hence, it's not a wheel of rebirth, I don't think. It's a wheel of the Dharma, or a wheel of the law, a Dharma chakra. And those 8 spokes are probably what Buddhists call the Eightfold Path of Practice. So that this wheel is a way of the Buddha pointing out to his disciple the way to achieve release from samsara is to practice morality, the 8 steps in the path described in the Fourth Noble Truth of the Path, and follow the teachings in the stanzas here concerning renunciation. So there are possibilities for escape also built into this basic Buddhist teaching device. That's the basic idea of the Wheel of Rebirth. And what I'd like to do now is to run through for you 7 specific examples of a painting of the Wheel of Rebirth, and show you, to give you some examples both of how they differ from each other in their content. Some parts remain the same, some parts are different, and also to give you some idea of the geographical and historical spread of paintings of the Wheel of Rebirth in Buddhist temples. My first example, the earliest evidence we have for a painting of the Wheel of Rebirth is not a surviving painting, but a surviving text. It's a text that survives from probably the 1st or 2nd century. The original was written then, probably. It's a Vinaya text, or it's a disciplinary text describing how monks should lead their lives. It's full of rules and also really entertaining stories. And this one in particular includes the story of how the Buddha's disciple Malgayayana traveled throughout the cosmos and came back like a spirit medium and told people what he saw. And the Buddha's other disciples complain, so the Buddha says, okay, if Malgayayana will not be there always, then you monks should paint a Wheel of Rebirth. And then you'll always have a method for teaching people about the same things that Malgayayana saw when he traveled to other realms of the cosmos. So that's what the story continues with. It continues with the Buddha saying what to put in the painting of the Wheel of Rebirth. He says there should be the 3 poisons. We've talked about those. There should be the 5 or 6 paths. There should be the 12-fold chain, or sometimes the 18-linked chain of dependent origination, pratitya samudpada. There should be a demon of impermanence holding the wheel in his, grasping the wheel in his claws. There should be a white altar symbolizing nirvana. We didn't really have that in our painting in the 19th century Tibetan version. There should be verses on renunciation, which we did have. And then the Buddha says, be sure and paint this in the right place. Put it on the exterior part of the temple, and be sure to appoint someone to stand there and explain it to all visitors who come to the temple. This is not something reserved for monks on the inside. It's not reserved for something related to meditation. It's the first teaching you're supposed to encounter, according to this story, anyway, when you visit a Buddhist temple. That's the earliest evidence we have. It's from India. It's from the 1st or 2nd century of this era. The second example is also from India. It's the world-famous complex of cave temples at Ajanta in central western India in Maharashtra state, here in west central India. The cave temples at Ajanta are carved into a cliff face around a river that proceeds this way. And here's the temple in question. It's cave 17. Originally, each cave, here's cave 17, here's cave 16, each cave had its own entrance, its own stairways leading up from the river down here. And that's now been obliterated and somewhat, it's virtually impossible to